and welcome to worship with Saugatuck Congregational Church, United Church of Christ here in Westport, Connecticut. I'm the Reverend Alison Buttrick Patton, and I am so glad to welcome you to this space this morning. I am joined by Susie and Julia, our music leaders this morning, and by Ian and Craig Patton, who are behind the scenes running the live stream this morning. If you are joining us online, on YouTube or on Facebook, a particularly warm welcome. I invite you to take a minute to say hi to others who are gathered online, to post your name in the chat or a word of greeting. If you're here for the first time, click on our guest book and share your name so that we can reach out to you and greet you during the week. And if you would like to follow along in the bulletin, whether online or here in the sanctuary, you can go to the link that's posted on Facebook or YouTube. You can go to saugatuckchurch.org and click on the big button that says Bulletin. Or you can go to the e-blast, which went out at 8 a.m. this morning, and you'll find the link to the bulletin there. For those who'd like to have something in your hands here in the sanctuary, the ushers also have printed out bulletins. Those bulletins these days are being designed, by the way, by Agin, for which we are so very grateful. Yes, you're getting a shout out. Give a little wave. This coming Thursday, I invite you to join us back on the beach. I trust it will be sunnier than it is this morning. We're going to gather for another theology on the beach. This time around, our theme is feeding our spirits. What keeps you going and connected to the holy? Bring your own chair, bring snacks if you like. We'll be meeting by the cannon. And if you don't have a beach sticker, just give me a shout and we will work together for carpooling or alternate parking options. We would love to have you all there. This is an informal time of gathering and conversation. It's a chance for us just to be together, to be on the beach, and to reflect with each other during the summer. I hope you will join us. If you're here in the sanctuary, you will note that we are no longer requiring masks. Given the high vaccination rate and low infection rate in our area, we are experimenting with allowing masks to be optional. That said, I encourage you to do what feels safe for you and for those that are around you. If you're immunocompromised, if you are not yet vaccinated, you might go ahead and consider wearing a mask. And so we will continue to monitor the public health situation and keep one another safe. Thank you so much for that. And now, friends, I invite you to take a deep breath, to inhale gratitude, exhale worry, to inhale Sabbath, and exhale stress. Inhale wonder, exhale judgment. Inhale love, exhale love. Keep breathing. And as you do, find the ground beneath your feet, this same ground on which our ancestors trod. In this church built on land once tended by the Paugussett and other indigenous peoples from whom we get our very name, Saugatuck Church. We give thanks for the land and for the peoples. Give thanks for all those who shared this journey of faith, past and present, seen and unseen. And come, whatever your age or the color of your skin, whomever you love, however you move through the world, come, bold or curious, seeker or skeptic. Bring your whole selves, all the pain and the fumbling, all the joy and the wonder. Bring it all. God welcomes it. God welcomes you. For we are made in God's own image and called to mend a hurting world. Here is where we find the love and the courage that we need. And so, friends, together, let us worship the living, loving God. Householder God, we gather to hear your ancient stories and to make sense of them for our own lives. We come to connect with each other and to grow in faith. Meet us here, we pray. Teach us to live more generous lives. Stir us to greater acts of compassion. Bind our hearts with neighbors and strangers, and expand our passion for your love and justice. This is what we seek. Amen. Beloved in Christ, we gather to give thanks and to sing and to pray and to name the places that we sometimes fall short. For this is the truth. There is much for us to confess. The earth groans, the people cry, our own hearts break. And so we pause and take time to name our part in the breaking. For the naming is the first step toward repair. If this prayer burdens you, wrestle with it. If it moves you, move with it. If it confuses or overwhelms you, stick with it. If it empowers you, well then, roll with it. Trust that God meets us in the wrestling and the rolling, in the breaking and the healing. Will you pray with me? Generous God, you formed this world and filled it with good things. When we cling to what you would have us share, when we fixate on what we deserve rather than on what others need, forgive us, we pray. Loosen our grasp and enlarge our hearts. Teach us to move through the world with a generous spirit. Equip us to labor together in your vineyard, each giving according to the time and the gifts we have, until the harvest sustains us all. We ask it, trusting that you are here to hear it. Attend to us now as we abide in the silence, naming in the quiet of our own hearts our prayers of lament and confession. beloved in Christ. Inhale grace. Exhale peace. Jesus said, ask and you will receive. This is what I think he meant. That there is forgiveness and to spare. Mercy overflowing. Love enough to heal every wound and to mend every breach. Beloved, we are a forgiven people, set free to forgive one another. Hearing that, trusting it, I invite you to turn to one another as we practice something that was done in the earliest Christian church, from wherever you are seated, to extend the peace of Christ with a wave, or with peace hands, to say, the peace of Christ is with you and also with you. So over the course of the last several weeks, we have been exploring the parables of Jesus, those short and often enigmatic stories that he told that challenged his listeners then and now to think about what God's kingdom, what God's beloved community might actually be like. I'd like to invite forward Linda Agin to read for us this morning a parable from the Gospel of Matthew.
Good morning. For the kingdom of heaven is like a householder who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. After agreeing with the laborers for the usual daily wage, he sent them into his vineyard. When he went out about 9 o'clock, he saw others standing without work in the marketplace. And he said to them, "You also go into the vineyard, and I will pay you whatever is right." So they went. When he went out again about noon, and about 3 o'clock, he did the same. And about 5 o'clock, he went out and found others standing around. And he said to them, "Why are you standing here without work all day?" They said to him, "Because no one has hired us." He said to them, "You also go into the vineyard." When evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his manager, "Call the laborers and give them their pay, beginning with the last and then going to the first." When those hired about 5 o'clock came, Each of them received the usual daily wage. Now, when the first came, they thought they would receive more, but each of them also received the usual daily wage. And when they received it, they grumbled against the landowner, saying, "These last worked only 1 hour, and you have made them equal to us who have borne the burden of the day and the scorching heat." But he replied to one of them, "Friend, I am doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for the usual daily wage? Take what belongs to you and go. I choose to give to this last the same as I give to you. Am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me? Or are you envious because I am generous?" Thanks be to God.
May God add a blessing to the reading and the hearing of this holy word. Will you pray with me? Generous-hearted God, oil the hinges of our heart's doors, that they may swing easily open to welcome you. Amen. Life isn't fair. It was maybe 8 p.m. at night. I desperately wanted to stay up late to watch Peter Pan on TV. It seemed entirely unfair that something as arbitrary as a bedtime should keep me from this once-in-a-child's lifetime opportunity. For those of you born in the last 2 decades, this was before on-demand streaming services. And so I sat on the steps, looking through the railing at my parents who were settled on the couch to watch the very movie I wasn't allowed to see. "It's not fair," I protested. "Life," said my dad, "isn't fair." It's a refrain that he repeated often, probably because I often protested. And what child isn't railing against the unfairness of the universe at one time or another? Indeed, what adult? Everyone ought to get what they deserve, no more, no less. That's fair, isn't it? At least, that's what those laborers seemed to think when they objected to the wage paid to their late arriving compatriots. They expected to be compensated more than those who had worked fewer hours. And so they stomped their feet and declared, in effect, "It's not fair." And I can hear my dad's voice echoing in my ear. Life isn't fair. Of course, now I say the same thing to my own kids. Now I understand that fairness is relative, maybe even in the eye of the beholder. Fair by what standard? According to whom? Haley may declare it unfair that her brother Bailey gets ice cream when she doesn't. Haley's mom may think it's entirely fair to serve ice cream only to those who have finished their dinner. And if Mom relents and gives Haley a scoop, Bailey may declare it unfair that he had to eat his broccoli and Haley did not. And so those early arriving laborers watched the householder distribute a day's wage to every worker, including those who had just been hired. And they raised their complaint. It's not fair. But was it? They themselves received the usual daily wage to which they had agreed, a sum sufficient to supply a family with food for somewhere between 3 and 6 days. The owner of the land, the householder, was as good as his word.
So why did they grumble? Not, it seems, because they got paid less than they had expected, but rather because others got paid just as much. You have made them equal to us, they complained. In the words of New Testament scholar Amy Jill Levine, the first hired did not want to be treated equally to those hired last. They wanted to be treated better. How often do we do that? Do we turn fairness into a competition as though another person's gain somehow diminishes our own? Or begrudge another's good fortune as though it makes our own accomplishments look somehow less shiny? I wonder whether there are days when more than equality, we want credit. Credit for earning what others have not, the grade, the medal, the place in line. To those early arriving laborers, and perhaps to us, the householder in Jesus' parable replies, am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me? The householder chose to pay everyone the same. Whether that was fair turns out to be the wrong question. Because fair, friends, is not actually a gospel value. Look through all 4 gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Jesus only mentions fairness once, and he is immediately called out for doing so. It happens a few chapters back in the Gospel of Matthew. We read from chapter 20 today. Look back at chapter 15, and there's a Canaanite woman, i.e., a woman who is not Jewish, who appeals to Jesus to help her sick daughter. In an uncharacteristically dismissive moment, Jesus replies by saying, "It is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." The witty woman replies, "Yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." Jesus is brought up short. And then he says, "Woman, great is your faith. Let it be done for you as you wish." And her daughter was healed instantly. Maybe Jesus was feeling tired that day or overwhelmed. Maybe he was really thinking, it's not fair that I have to take care of everyone who comes my way. Whatever the case, that woman set him straight. Life isn't fair. We work with what we get, even if it's crumbs. Now that story deserves its own sermon. But I mention it here because the Canaanite woman seems to have been reminding Jesus of what the householder in his parable also knew. The fairness is not the point. It took the image of a woman and her ailing daughter surviving on crumbs to bring Jesus back to himself that day, to recall that the kingdom of heaven is like a householder who keeps going back out to the market, who hires everyone he can find, who offers each of them the dignity of work and then pays every single one of them a living wage. I will pay you what is right or just, the householder tells those first workers early in the morning, and that's what he does. Not only for the first hired, but for all of them. Everyone he finds. Justice, not fairness, is the householder's measuring stick. Who deserves a living wage? Who Who deserves enough to feed their family? Everyone. Everyone. Friends, this is a parable about corporate economics, about God's call to ensure that everyone in the neighborhood has enough work, enough shelter, enough food, enough joy. And so the word for the day, it is not fair, it is generous. Generosity is the virtue of giving good things to others freely and abundantly, says the Generosity Project of Notre Dame University. It is a learned character trait that involves attitude and action, entailing both inclination and actual practice of giving liberally. Somewhere along the way, the householder in Jesus' parable learned this trait, both the attitude and the action. Are you envious because I am generous? He asks. And embedded in that question, in the parable, is an invitation for all of us to follow his lead. If you've ever practiced generosity in your own life, then you know that being generous not only benefits your neighbor, it also feels good. The householder did what he wanted with the resources he had. And what he wanted was to help sustain the community, to make sure that the people he invited to labor in his vineyard received more than crumbs. It seems he knew that doing so would not only serve others, but would serve him as well. When we go on our high school mission trips, our adult leaders have developed the habit of looking for excuses to model generosity. So one year, Kim Matthias bought ice cream for an entire team of young kids, a whole gaggle of children playing soccer nearby. That gift of ice cream thrilled the kids, and it gave a boost to the local ice cream vendor, and it inspired our own youth. But I know that it also made Kim's day, because giving like that, it does the heart good. Sometimes we get to exercise generosity. Sometimes we get to benefit from the generosity of others. And so when Craig and I moved to Connecticut from Chicago, close friends of ours came over to say goodbye. As we shared a meal, they handed us a check. Every month, they explained, we decide together where we want to give 10% of our month's earnings in order to express our gratitude, share what we have, spread the love. This month, we chose to give that gift to you. That money helped us through our transition. But what sticks with me most is the spirit of that gift. The intentionality with which they asked, how shall we be generous this month? I love that. Back in the spring of this year, a Saugatuck church member asked themselves a similar question. Then they reached out to me to share a remarkable decision. A decision to make a $200,000 gift to cover the cost of a new building-wide audio-video system here at Saugatuck Church. They gave that gift to us in memory of Holly Wheeler, a Saugatuck member who died from COVID in December of last year. Holly, if you know her, you know, loved music and loved this community and was deeply grateful for the online worship services and all the Zoom gatherings that kept us connected and sustained throughout the pandemic. And so the donor explained with barely contained excitement, it felt good. It felt right to honor Holly this way. The new AV system will greatly enhance the sound quality in our sanctuary as we worship. It will strengthen our streaming capability here and down in Hoskins Hall, and so it will expand the ways that we worship and minister to folks within and far beyond our four walls. And I don't know who is more excited about it, us or the donor. Friends, not every gift is financial, and not every financial gift will be $200,000. Some of them will be more. And some of them will be less. The good news is we all have the chance to practice generosity, to give freely and abundantly of what we have. Life isn't fair. It is complicated and sometimes incredibly hard. And so it is also full of opportunities for us to share what we have. Full of invitations to follow the householder out into the square over and over again. To find our neighbors and to give with generous hearts, that together, joyfully, we may labor and eat and be glad. This, friends, the kingdom of heaven is like this. May it be so. Thanks be to God. Amen. And Lamont says that there are three kinds of prayer. Thank you, and help me, and wow.
And so we take time at least every 7 days to join our hearts and lift them to God. To name the places where we give thanks, the places where we struggle, and the moments where we are overcome by awe. I invite you to enter into that prayerful space with me now. We'll begin with silence, and then I will offer some words of prayer, and then when I say, listen, God, for your people are praying, I invite you to chime in out loud, wherever you are, here in the sanctuary, to name the people or places or circumstances which are on your hearts and minds. And if you are joining us online, to add your prayers to the chat. We will gather them all together and lift them to a listening God. Come, let us go before the throne of grace. God of extravagant blessing, you who have given us abundant blessing, you formed the earth and filled it with good things, with creatures that run and swim and soar, with people to work and play and love. You have painted the sky in every color. You have made the brook to burble and the tomato to ripen. You have given us sight and flavor to give us glad hearts. And so we thank you, generous-hearted God, for all the ways that you tend to your people. Plant in us that same generosity spirit, that we might give to others what you have first given to us. Love and wonder and care and hope and joy. Strengthen us for the journey, we pray. Bear us up on the hard days. Meet us when we languish in the marketplace, and send us those to call us out and invite us into your vineyard, where together we might labor in joy. Generous-hearted God, we ask it, trusting that you listen to us now. Attend to us, we pray, for your people are praying.
Prayers of thanks for the generosity I see in others.
Only when we pray safety and recovery for those overcome by flooding in Germany and in Henan province, China. We pray for an unsettled planet and the wisdom to make choices that can reverse the climate crisis in which we find ourselves. We pray for those who continue to struggle with the COVID pandemic, for our neighbors in Florida, Arkansas, Missouri, Louisiana, for those who cannot breathe, and those who care for them, for communities unsettled and struggling to find a way forward, for all of us striving to make our communities safe and whole. We pray for those places around the world where violence is erupting. May we find a way to be generous with justice and with peace. Generous-hearted God, we pray this and all things. Lift them up to your listening ears, trusting that you lean into us as we lean into you. Bless and receive these prayers and all of us. We ask it in the name of your Son and our guide, Jesus Christ, who taught us how to pray together with one voice, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Our gifts come in all shapes and sizes. I am so grateful this morning for the gift of music that Susie and Julia have offered and continue to offer throughout this summer of transition. We continue to hold Heather Hamilton, our former director of music, in our prayers as she launches her new ministry. And we ask that you hold Saugatuck Church in your prayers as we seek that next director of music who will share their gifts with us. And speaking of gifts, have I been speaking of gifts? I mean it when I say the gifts you give, they make a difference, friends. Whatever the size, when they are gathered together, they have an impact. This church is a space for those who are hungry. For those who are hungry for food, or for hope, or for healing, or for wisdom. Here, the gifts that we give make so much possible, and so I thank you for the tangible gifts that you give, including your gifts of paper and coin. This morning, if you feel called to make a contribution to the ministries of Saugatuck Church, you can do so by leaving something in the basket. If you look online at saugatuckchurch.org/ways to give, you can find the link if you're online. And if you have the bulletin, you will see a number to which you can text your donation. However you give, whatever you give, those gifts are multiplied by the Holy One in our midst. And I thank you for all that you do. And now, friends, our worship is ending, but its gifts remain. Take its praise inside you. Take its goodness with you. Love by its light, its courage and grace, and do not be afraid. Inspired by the divine, seek to serve in plenty or want. Find ways to share. Discern the truth and speak it. Resist all wrong and do not be afraid. Regard all people as your people. In hard times and good, take care of yourself. Take care of your people. And do not be afraid. And may the life-giving love of God and the life-renewing grace of Jesus Christ and the life-transforming boldness of the Spirit fill us, unite us, and guide us this day and every day. Let the people say amen.
Amen.
Amen.